Infamous traffic. I actually considered putting this on the tripod for the play because I wasn't sure. I knew I wanted to capture everything and I wasn't sure that I could do it with the handheld, but honestly, it's the thinking while playing that's the hard part. It's not holding the camera. So you get the usual shaky camera treatment that I am known for. Alright, Infamous Traffic. What about it? So this was actually the first Cold War game that I've played. And the first time I played it, I kind of walked away with, gosh, I don't know how I feel about this. I only got it because there was a Hollenspiel sale, and I was interested enough in it and thought that it's not the only Hollenspiel game I've played, but I thought that, well, you know, out of the ones that I played that I'm uncertain about, this is the one that I most think works. You know, that strikes, you know, my fancy well. I tried the Bird one as well, and that felt nowhere near as good, but which is a shame because there's, you know, I'd love a Bird game on China that was a little bit richer, but it didn't do it for me. But anyway, on to this one. I guess what this feels most like to me is something like a brutal card game, you know, like, and I don't mean, you know, I mean a traditional card game, something like Pitch, yeah, where, or Hearts. Hearts is actually a really good comparison to it, where you're able to pull something off, like Shooting the Moon, that everybody maybe isn't expecting at that given time. Or you're able to look like you're shooting the moon and pull off getting away with only a couple of points on what was really a lousy hand, but by making everybody think you're going to be shooting, you're able to position your hand in such a way that they basically either had to hand it to you or take some damage themselves. Anyway, with this, the way it maintains that isn't through the secrecy of what the players are holding, which is how the card games do it, but rather through layers of obfuscation and difficulty in understanding what an action is going to actually accomplish. And because there are multiple inputs going in, I don't think you'll ever really know that, but the game system itself also tries to hide that, so that when you first step up and try to play, you may not have any idea what you're trying to do in this game. That's probably going a little too far. I don't think it's necessary with this system. It feels like the system itself and the intentions of the players are sufficient to hide things that the rules and the way the game presents itself don't necessarily have to be as difficult a nut to crack as they are. So my first impression might have been, wow, I have no idea whether or not the game holds up and will continue to provide that, geez, I'm not sure what's going to happen if I do this experience. It does, I think. It really does. And I think it does it more strongly than Cole's later game that I reviewed recently, the John and Company, or John Company. Sorry, John and Company is the expansion of it. That's not to say this game isn't without some flaws, though. Probably the biggest thing is the amount of state maintaining that the players have to perform. This game almost begs for to be computerized, you know, to be put on some kind of app or something, some kind of support for it to maintain that, to make sure that you're checking the supply lines, making sure that they're adequately supported, making sure that everything's correct on it, making sure the number of dice is correctly handled. It might be easier to play this via Vassal or something like that than to just play it as a board game. I don't think I made any terrible mistakes on the game that I videoed. Every other game, which is 2, that I've played of this, there has been at least one major error that, had an impact in terms of forgetting to move a die or forgetting, not noticing that a chain was broken or something like that. So that's pretty big. Anyway. I'm left without my notes that I've tried to... the rulebook is a procedural rulebook. I hate procedural rulebooks. It's a particularly bad one. The fact that they had to put all the clarifications in on this additional printing is one indication of that. It attempts to be too sparse. It attempts to be to not link issues properly. So, when a die gets removed, yeah, that's covered in one place. When a die gets re-rolled, that's covered in one place. But it kind of needs to be fed into elsewhere. There's a number of issues like that that make it hard to find things. Now, luckily, it's a small rule book. This is one of the things that's kind of nice about Euro-y type games is, well, they usually don't tend to have, 30-page rule book. But I do find that it is difficult to understand what the game is about, what you're supposed to do. It's like you have to play it a couple of times. I've played it already. I knew that I couldn't do a video of it without playing a game of it first. After in between the prior playing and when I videoed it. Even reading the rules, having played it before, I just had no idea how everything was going to work, because the rules don't really give you that feeling of it. They tell you what actions you can take, and then later, at some other point in the rule book, they tell you what the consequences are. But they don't give you any kind of guidance towards how you're supposed to do things. Where they do probably give that. Say I've got this playthrough here. I don't deal with examples of play. I found that the rules were bad enough I had to dig through the example of play to try to find the rule. I couldn't find it. It was actually, I don't even remember. It was in the passing section, which is when the player order chip gets reassigned. Well, some kind of reference where you'd expect that. So I'd expect that it, moves at the end of the turn or whatever. Somewhere I would expect to be able to find it, and I couldn't find it in any of the places I expected to find it. Well, it turns out it's exactly where it belongs, but there are no other references to it and no reason to find it. And again, when I looked through the playthrough, I couldn't find it where I expected to see it. But that expectation comes not from this game, but from other games, from experience in general. But there could be some sidebar type action going on where they say, you know what, remember this was set back in this role, and stuff like that, just to help link you and try to put together all these different little pieces of procedural instructions. Because, it's like trying to understand food by reading a recipe. Maybe some people can do it. I can't. I can understand food by looking at the ingredients and hearing a little bit about it, how you cook them and everything. But by reading the recipe and the rote, directions to do it, I got no idea what it's going to come out to be. That's how I feel about games as well. I can't look at a purely procedural rule book and understand what the game's going to be about. I've had much, much worse problems with other games that have procedural rule books. Axis Empires It's not as bad a rule book in terms of being procedural as this, although it's damn close. But it's a full-blown war game and a fairly complicated one. And how do you piece together what you're able to do, what your actions will cause in the future, if it's only just like step-by-step explanation of what happens at that particular time and what choices you have. Anyway, let's try to get into what the game allows. So, mainly, the game gives you this interesting situation where you almost have to work with other people. You could go generate your own little supply line, but someone else can jump in and crack it because you'll be too diversified. So you kind of have to specialize in one of the things, either the opium, the shipping, or the merchants. Unless it's a 3-player or less game, there's going to be competition in the specializations. And I kind of question whether the game is going to work terribly well in, say, 3. Although, at the beginning of the game, specializing in merchants, which seems like the best thing because they're free, that was my thought the first play, is difficult to get rolling because you have to spend 2 investment actions to get the merchants going. So you're thrown into this position where you kind of have to work with other people in order to maintain your specialization. I want to be the shipper. I want to be the opium provider. You are put into this position, though, where a couple of people, at least in the 4 or more player game, a couple of people are going to be competing over something, and that means they're not going to get to be the specialized people that they think they are, and therefore they might become kind of loose cannons facing others. The specialization gives you a huge advantage because once you slap your piece down there, nobody can push it out of there just by undercutting it. But they can get it out of there by other means. They can break the chain it's in, or whatever, or prevent it from making money. You can always drop the value. This little thing is real cute. It gives you an incentive to keep your income high so that you can do lots of investments. Lots of investments is important because that's how you can become the dominant player in a particular industry. So if somebody gets a big investment advantage, they can set themselves up so that, okay, well, I'm the magic guy in opium right now. I've got the lead in that, but I can very easily get the lead in merchants if I have more actions. I just keep taking merchants, and now I've got the lead in that. Now I can leverage both of them together to shoot my income up higher and not be knocked out as easily. And now, I can just try to take a monopoly on all of China that way. And that's obviously like what the game kind of leads you to think that's the way to win. But there's always the pressure valve, powder keg, whatever. You can just blow the whole thing up and change, what the victory conditions are by throwing the revolution in China. And that's really the kind of shoot the moon type thing, except if you manage to get the revolution off and, you're going to win because of it or whatever, it's not only are you kind of reversing the victory conditions, although not entirely, because somebody who has a lot of pieces and has had a lot of investment is able to probably get more pieces on the board. But even early in the game, you can just, drop down and say, I win, right? So players have to be really, really aware of that possibility from other players. So you're always like, your attention's fixated maybe on, on the leadership and maybe on supply chains that you think that you can get into or regions that you think you can get into. And then somebody can, just reverse what the game's about. And that's hard to keep in my mind at least how to defend against that, to keep the balance between the two. You know, it's again like in a game of hearts. Yep, I'm just throwing my good card, you know, my bad cards away because they might get us points. Oh, somebody else wasn't doing that. Now, it's in front of you, and it's in front of you in hearts when you don't see the big cards falling. Here it's even more in front of you, but it's hard to discern at times. And I think that gives it a lot of playability. I mean, just think how many times you can replay hearts, right? Because that has randomness in it, but this has a certain randomness in terms of when the conspiracies come out. So that's going to kind of flow your game. You got the prize situation, which is kind of neat because you have partial information and then a priority pick based just on partial information. So if you see a good thing, you definitely want to boost your priority and make sure you get that. But if you see a lousy thing, you may either want to avoid getting in the prize pool at all, or you still may want to make sure that you get a good positioning on it. Jockeying for that good position can be kind of difficult because if you're looking to increase your income and you're doing all kinds of things to do that, to make sure that you have the highest income, well, someone may do something and knock your income down. We saw that with the blue player in the game that I played, where the guy who looked like he was in, you know, the obvious lead for that, well, he got knocked down. If he had passed earlier, he would have had a very good lead for the prize. It didn't end up mattering, but yep. Trying to think what else. I mean, I feel like I said more during play than I'm saying here. The choices of actions is always interesting. Putting your own pieces down early gets them kind of established. If you're the leader, that means they won't be undercut. But it also fills up the box, and it makes it harder. So even if you're possible to be undercut, you can put a 1 in a box and just like, well, fine, if you want to put a 0, you can knock me out, but then nobody's making any money off this. So putting early can guarantee you a position in a board that's tight, that's hard to find locations that you can place the kind of piece you want to place. On the other hand, holding your piece back gives you a flexibility, and then you end up grabbing more of these conspiracies. What we saw from this game was, on the first turn, lots and lots of conspiracies came out. And that's really what made the game possible to end so quickly. Is not only that lots came out, but the particular ones that came out. A lot of British flags and stuff like that. And that's going to, give you a different flavor to the game each time. It's very abstract. It has no narrative to me, or none that I can access easily, right? To me, it feels kind of in that way, and in terms of the brutal nature that it has, in terms of what you can do to people, and how you've got to kind of pay attention to what everybody's got on the board and everything. It kind of reminds me of a Tigris and Euphrates, with a little bit of a thematic layer to it that, it's more than thematic, because it does, I guess it kind of fits when people talk about strong theme, because it does relate to this stuff, but I don't feel like the things I'm doing are really driven by what my desires are. I feel like I'm doing stuff like pulling from the conspiracy circles, for example, or withholding acting, that feels more gamey than it feels topically driven. I'm not trying to slip in and get there first and establish myself necessarily, for a lot of reasons. And so, yeah, I think the only way to really look at this one and be excited about it is as an abstract, as an almost pure abstract, at least for me. And in that sense, I think it does a very, very good job. I haven't seen enough of it to be able, to say that my feelings that it will hold up to multiple playing, a lot of playing, honestly, are correct. But when you have a game that allows for a lot of interaction between the players and brutal attacks on them, essentially, much more than war games generally do, and these varying, the sharp division in which way the game's going to go in terms of the victory. I think you've got room for something that you can play again and again and start to develop more and more opportunities for interaction between the player that aren't obvious initially. So deal making, stuff like that, is more and more likely, I think, the more you play. We can see a lot of that. What I do see as hard in this is sometimes it's hard for a game that allows you so much attack capability against people sometimes, it can be very hard to bring down someone who's in a leading position. You can knock their income down, but they still have the pieces that they bought, and they'll be able to perhaps put them back into play. They've still got that leader position if they had it before. So what they put down, you're not going to undercut. The dice, wow, I don't even know what to say about the dice. I mean, again, there's so much interaction there in terms of what's in the pool interacting with what's on the board to let you know, yeah, I can go in here because of this die. But on the other hand, the port could just be opened up, and then you could get in there. Yeah. So it intrigues me. It's a game that I kind of wish I had a group that was okay with the idea of like playing a bigger game and then playing this, because this is not a huge game. This is ideally, I think this should be played in under an hour. I don't know what they say here. I don't see anything here. But on the other hand, when I played it with my group, we were so slow that it was the big game of the day, I think, or the equivalent of a big game of the day. So I would like to be in a group where we could get something like this played sort of quickly. It doesn't feel like once you have the hang of it, it doesn't feel like you have to work all that hard in understanding what's going on. Well, it depends. It depends on how careful you want to be. I would rather play it at a quicker pace where it's not that careful. Anyway, I'm really intrigued by this one, and I feel like I'd really like to, smack it around a little bit more with other players. I don't know if I felt that way as much with the John Company. That felt like it put so much structure on what you're doing. Now maybe, I don't know. We won't go there. But yeah, this one feels like something that maybe takes a little bit of effort to get past that initial play, the initial confusion that the game presents you with. And some of that's just the rule books, man. And that's a shame, because people will play it once and say, yeah, I couldn't fucking figure out what was going on, and I'm not sure I want to ever be in that position again. I don't think I want to play this again, because it wasn't clear to me that anything was making any sense. It just felt like I was getting battered around by actions other people were taking that they didn't understand either. That is not, for me, an appealing introduction to a game. I would rather be given kind of a clear, yeah, this is what you want to do, you know? Not this is the path that you should take to win, but in a sense, though, with this game, you can't do that because the ways forward are almost hidden, you know? You could point out, well, there's a way to do it this way, and a way to do it this way, and a way, and to some extent, maybe that kind of explanation would make some sense to me, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad that I gave it more than, one shot. If I had just bought this, never played it with someone else, I might have tried to video it right out of the box, as I often do, read the rules. I don't get what's going to happen. And been really, really miserable about it, which shows a sign of some negatives towards how I approach things. There may be some games that have a lot more of interest to them that I don't see just because I haven't given them a couple of chances. But, that's the nature of life, right? All right. So